Welcome, everybody, to Sippin' and Shippin'. I'm your host, Brian Weinstein. We'll be kicking it here every other Friday, quenching your thirst for an insider's take to enhance your customer experience. So grab your drink of choice, kick back, it's Sippin' and Shippin' time. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Sippin' and Shippin'. I'm your host, Brian Weinstein, and I'm here as I am every week with Caitlin Postal.
Hey, Brian, every other week, right?
Every other, well, I'm with you almost every day.
Well, unfortunately for you, every day. Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So, yes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's not every week, but we are not every week for the show, but almost every day for life.
Well, every day we're sipping and shipping. So
exactly right. Exactly
maintaining
right.
the name.
And this week we have one of our very own, Leslie Karr, who runs our customer success group. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you so much. I feel privileged to be on Sippin' and Shippin'.
Yes. And do you feel a little bit of a complex because you don't have the big microphone and all that stuff?
Yeah, because I feel like that would make me really official, and that would be nice. I'm looking at you two, and I think it's a good look. It's very it's like the real deal.
Right.
Don't let it fool you, Leslie. Don't let it fool you.
And it hides like half my face, which is perfect. So if I can only like duck down so that you can't even see the bags under my eyes, it'd be perfect. All right. So this week we are talking about customer success. Leslie, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, it's most of your career, correct?
Yeah. 20 plus, going on 25 years in the customer success, service, and support realm. Okay. A lot of what I have done has been in software as a service related to industries. So email marketing was a large part of my career, as well as social media marketing, hotel hospitality, sales enablement, and market research have been all the types of companies I've been involved with, all software as a service related. So this opportunity here at Ryder E-commerce by Whiplash has been my first foray into the 3PL space. Uh-huh. And but it brings in that software as a service component big time with the Whiplash application. And so I feel really at home here. Yep. And I'm learning and have learned so much about the 3PL industry. So
yeah. And once you get sucked into this whole fulfillment logistics space, it's like an addiction. You can't give it up, because life after that just seems so easy and simple. And who wants easy and simple?
I'm 4 years in, and I don't think there's an exit strategy yet. So yeah, I'll attest to that.
Yeah, well, it's exciting because of the complexity and of what the ultimate deliverable is in our industry. Because really, we're in the e-commerce third-party fulfillment. It really hits home. You're like, oh yeah, I want to order from that cool, digitally native brand, and right. I want to get that delivered right to my doorstep, and it's very relatable. So I'm loving that part.
Yep, absolutely. So tell us a little bit, what is customer success?
So customer success is when a customer of yours is getting all of their needs met, their expectations and needs met by everything that goes on within your organization, and how you support them and act on behalf of them and get the job done. That's what customer success is in a nutshell.
And this is more, and we're speaking today specifically more about a B2B type of customer success, right? This isn't your call center type of, right.
Yeah, so customer success is very common to have that discipline within business to business organizations. So when your customers are other businesses, they want to make sure that they're getting the value out of your relationship, right? And so that means you have a customer success organization that tries to ensure that, anticipates the needs, knows what the needs of that customer is, that business customer. And different than support, customer support is more, I have a question, can you help me with this problem? It's a little more reactionary. It's like, here's a question, we'll get you an answer. Customer success and customer success management is proactive, strategic. I can see down the line that my customer's going to need something, and I try and fulfill it and coordinate internally to make that happen.
Right.
That's the difference.
And so what are some of the keys, I guess, to initially establishing yourself with your customer and what that role looks like?
When I think about the e-commerce brands that we work with, they have a lot of different companies in their tech stack, a lot of different partners, a lot of different vendors. And so that's a lot to kind of manage for a brand. And they oftentimes they could be really small teams, one or two people, up to even the larger companies that have, a number of people working in a relationship with a vendor or a partner. It can be daunting for a brand to figure out how to manage those relationships. So I always think about it with three categories of things to keep in mind: partner, communicate, and collaborate. So if you're the e-commerce brand and you're bringing on a new vendor, you want to first set expectations that you want to partner with them. And the customer success side of that organization should really perk up when you say things like that, because they're really looking for that. It's not just a vendor. You're not just, they're doing XYZ each month and sending you an invoice and it's done. This is a partnership. It's a complex, situation in terms of an e-commerce brand's tech stack and other people they're working with. And they really want to, you should be partnering with your vendors, not treating them like vendors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yes. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know in the sales process, that's typically a question that brands will ask, like, will I have a direct contact? What does that look like? And when I say customer success, I think the ears kind of perk up, but what does that look like, right? How do you define that partnership, and how does this person become, to your point, more proactive versus reactive?
Yeah, and in that partnership, you want to start out by setting expectations. How will you work together? How will you work with your CSM and the other folks at the organization? You want to also share the context of your brand and the bigger picture, so that the customer success manager on the other side understands, higher level, what you're really driving at, business goals, that type of thing. And you could even share, obviously you're going to share certain key KPIs and performance metrics, but what do they mean? And what's the bigger picture backdrop of what your company is trying to achieve?
Yeah, I always look at like the whole partner concept, and I could speak, specifically to 3PL, right? It wasn't like that before, right? They had a traditional customer service rep who was a little bit more day-to-day tactical. It wasn't going out of your way. It's and not, I'm certainly not saying by any means that we're the only ones that do this, right? But I think it's something in the 3PL space that is relatively new, is just really getting in there and having that partner, being a partner with your partner, as opposed to the way it was before.
Yeah, I think we were talking earlier about how there's, the software as a service component, the Whiplash application, for instance, and then there's the, actual operations in the warehouse facility. And that's a very complex ecosystem. And there's a lot going on between operations, technology, engineering, and the customer success management function is supposed to help all of that work together better for the customer, and understanding the customer's most important needs there and applying to all of that complexity. That's really where the customer success management function can shine.
Yeah, and I love that concept of like the upfront contract, of just understanding the bigger picture. What is their why, and what is their expectation of what they're going to get out of this relationship, which I think helps to transition from like turning it from you're my vendor, I'm your customer, into like we're partners. How are we going to tackle these initiatives together, which I love.
Yeah. And we can even get into the brass tacks of the communication piece that I mentioned. This is where you can really bring that partnership to life. Like, what are the communication methods that are going to work best for your team in speaking with your partner now? What are the regular meeting cadences, right, that you can have where you're touching base on a strategic level? Maybe operationally strategic, maybe it has something to do with technology, but when you're having those regular meetings, it also gives you the opportunity to talk about how to do feedback, because if you set up those communication methods and those meetings, then you want to make sure you're providing positive feedback and constructive feedback to your customer success manager. That improves that whole partnership overall.
Yeah, I think that communication, right, is two-way, especially when the partner and the customer success manager that you have is that true partner, and there's trust, because I think trust is one of those things that has to be built right out of the gate. you can provide both positive and constructive criticism in both directions, in for the sake of bettering the experience.
Absolutely. And that's why, you give a bigger context to what you're trying to do. That allows the customer success manager to be more preemptive of like, oh, I see what's going to be happening. Let's make sure we're all on the same page, operations. And that builds trust too. Once, the more information you give your customer success manager, they can wow you by thinking ahead even further than you are. And
right.
Dazzle and delight.
Exactly right.
My last of the three is collaborate.
Okay.
So if you treat them like a partner, you set up your communication, then this opens up collaboration, like true collaboration. And as an e-commerce brand, I always recommend that you bring your related partners together. So, your 3PL and your returns provider or what have you, any of that, introduce them to each other. Set some expectation. Maybe it's quarterly that you want to have some sort of communication or touch base. Maybe that's an important priority. Go ahead and do that. You want these folks working together on your behalf. So introduce them to each other and encourage, communication on appropriate topics. That also sets you up for when there's challenges, because this complex systems that we work in and things can go wrong here or there. You want to work with your customer success managers to collaborate on overcoming the challenges. Work together, bring in the other partners. Hey, what do we need to do collectively? If we do this over here, can you do this over here? That really makes when challenges come up, they can get resolved much more quickly if everyone pitches in to help and they're in that collaboration zone.
So Leslie, what does collaboration look like as far as bringing those partners together? You talked about before, like setting up, and it's so simple, but such a great concept of how are we going to communicate? What does that cadence look like? So at what point does it make sense, or how do brands approach bringing other vendors together? Like have you seen has been the most successful way of attacking that?
So the good news is that there's not one pat answer, and it can really depend on what the e-commerce brand's needs are. You don't have to get fancy. You don't have to set up like yet another regular meeting. You can simply do a introduction and a quick expectation setting between the vendors that says, hey, I'd like to touch base. Maybe it's quarterly, if you do want to set up a meeting, or maybe it's initially, let's set up just an initial meeting. And then from there, you can take the coordination and collaboration into email, or when a situation arises, you can call up the troops, so to speak. But you don't have to make it onerous to set up this collaboration between partners. I think it's key you just set the expectation up front by introducing them and saying, when things like this happen, I'd like us all to work together. I'd like you to work together on those kinds of topics. And I think that's super powerful for your various partners to hear from you, because they'll want to include you. They'll want to take that initiative and be like, hey, you introduced me to so-and-so. I'd like to bring them into this. And they can be suggesting when it's time to bring partners together. You don't always have to be the person saying, it's time for us to get together.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not a one size fits all, but at least if you're empowering them to work together, why not stack up those resources? Let them remove the middleman. Let them communicate to continue to leverage those resources to work towards that big picture why, which keeps coming up. Why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? The more you know, the better they can work together. Yeah. Understood.
Yeah. I think as things have gotten much more complex, right? There's so many more layers in a lot of the fields, certainly in our 3PL space, where there may have been more of a cloak of secrecy almost years and years ago. It's become let's forge an even broader net of collaboration with all of the resources coming together, which is interesting.
Well, that's what I've learned in the software as a service business. There's so many integration points that you can have within your tech stack, and you want to be able to utilize the expertise of all of those folks in that tech stack. And there's a lot of intertwined best practice or tips, or what do other people do? What do other brands do in this situation? And you want to, pool that knowledge and apply it to your situation. So it unlocks a lot of power for you as an e-commerce brand to bring those folks together.
Yeah. So what would you consider some of the biggest values that having a strong customer success team at your disposal, brings to a brand or a product or a service or whatever?
Well, first and foremost, they will be looking at your needs. They'll be analyzing what you're telling them is important, what the priorities are, and they're going to be looking at that as, well, these are needs. And as experts within their world, whether in our environment be the Whiplash application and how we apply that in our operations, they will be able to bring to bear that on your needs because they're understanding your bigger picture. And then secondly is they will be coordinating internally because they will be acting as you, but internally within. Again, you've got the software, the technology, you've got the operations, you've got small parcel, you've got all of these things going on at one time, and the customer success manager will be a central hub. They're not like your most important person on your team within. We've got operators who do all the key work every day that's so critically important, but they'll have a worldwide view sort of your activities and needs within our company. And that's really powerful. It's
a role that really makes sure that there's strong alignment, right, on the internal and external side, right? I mean, it's such a critical, and again, going back to things are more complex, there's more touch points, right? So there's just everyone needs to be aligned.
Right. And it's a big job, but the customer success manager sort of mandate is to help internally and help externally. It's a help everywhere to make the needs come to fruition for the customer. And that is something that you're not necessarily going to get through just a support channel, because that's more reactive. That's more, I have a question, I have an issue. The customer success manager is really trying to be more proactive for you and look ahead.
So we've talked a lot about ways that you can leverage your brand success manager, or things that you should go to them on. Where do you draw the line? Where is it like, no, the customer success manager, they're not the right person for that? Like, where do you see brands stepping outside of the boundaries?
I have to say that by and large, in my experience, brands don't do that. They if we do a good job of setting out the expectation of what a customer success manager is and where they can get support and how they should get support, whether it's through a customer success manager or through maybe more of a ticketing support team or something like that, then a lot of brands, they get their needs met. And so they don't feel the need to say, well, okay, can you just do this for me if it's not quite appropriate? So by and large, if we do our job in laying out and executing on that, how we should support them, that doesn't happen very much. But when
it's advantageous for them to stay in their lane, right? It's like, why let them keep focusing on what they're doing. Let's not distract them.
Yeah. But when it does happen, it's the honesty and transparency is the best policy, right? It's hey, this ask, we aren't going to be able to accommodate it, but let me help you figure out how you can do it, and obviously there's things they could bring from their other customers and how they approach that situation. There's their knowledge of your operation because you've treated them like a partner and you've given them insight into your culture and how you work, and they might be able to recommend things. And so we never want to just be a hard no, but we want to support what is hey, this is what we can recommend. And so ideally through some transparent discussion, you could still help. We can, as a customer success team, can still help the customer get their need met.
Individuals, what kind of individual are you looking for your team? Because it sounds like they have to they have to be able to cover a lot of different aspects and understand a lot of different aspects.
Yeah. So customer success managers sometimes are really a rare breed, but the first thing is that they have the customer gene. They feel, they think like a customer. They understand a customer. They've worked in customer support, service, or success before, and they have that innate understanding of what it means to think like the customer and support them. So that's really important. In the 3PL business, and in particularly something like the Ryder E-commerce space, it's having a technical knowledge, being able to understand software and how it works in the 3PL world, and having a little experience in the actual fulfillment and operations side. And so those are sort of like three big aspects, right? Is customer, technology, and ops and fulfillment knowledge. Those are the three big areas that I look for.
Well, you've built a great team. You've got a lot of great people there, and I'm saying that at the risk of being a shameless plug, being considered a shameless plug, but I do have to say that.
Well, our team is wonderful. I'm really grateful that I have such wonderful people on my team, and we're growing and evolving. Where we've added new team members, and we've also been just looking at everything we do. We always want to get better. So look for us to do more in the future.
That's awesome. Well, Leslie, thank you very much for coming on and talking about customer success, which is, something for me has been a breath of fresh air for our organization overall. And I think, the benefits, whether you're a 3PL or in a SaaS space or and a multitude of other industries, having that right customer success could differentiate you from others.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right, Caitlin, you want to take us out?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Leslie, for joining us. Thank you to you and your team. Our customers' success is ultimately our success, so appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Sippin' and Shippin'. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Check us out on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right. Awesome.